Revised. Asterisk. In Roberto Suarez's luxurious office, as the van slowly made its way through the snow, Valentina observed the profile of her mysterious savior. She wondered why she felt that this setback, far from being a disaster, could be the beginning of something unexpected. Mateo's van struggled along the road as the snow fell harder. The silence between them became almost tangible. "And what are you doing here?" Valentina finally asked, rubbing her hands together to warm them. "You don't seem like a local." Mateo gripped the steering wheel, choosing his words carefully. "I'm taking a break. Needed to get away from the city. Work problems. Something like that," he responded with a strained smile. "Let's just say I found out my partner wasn't who I thought he was." Valentina nodded, recognizing the bitterness in his voice. "I understand. In my profession, there's a lot of betrayal too. Architects stealing ideas, clients not paying. And this Suarez, how do you know he's trustworthy?" Mateo asked, trying to sound casual. "I don't," Valentina admitted. "But his eco-tourism project could transform this region. If my designs are chosen, I'll not only make a fortune, but I'll be able to create something truly sustainable." Mateo suppressed the urge to tell her the truth. It wasn't the right time. "There it is," he said, pointing to a wooden cabin through the snow. The lights were off, but the place looked sturdy and welcoming. The cabin. It was a modest yet beautiful era, with a design that made the most of the light. Natural, blending in perfectly with the surroundings. "It's beautiful," Valentina commented as they entered. Whoever designed it understood the relationship between space and nature. "The owner's daughter designed it," Mateo explained, skillfully lighting the fireplace as someone who had spent many winters in places like this would. "She's an architect, like you." Valentina walked through the cabin, admiring the details. The only room had 2 single beds separated by a nightstand. The kitchen was small but functional, and although the bathroom was basic, it was spotless. "I've known them for years," Mateo continued, avoiding mentioning that he had met them during a vacation when he was a successful businessman, not a fugitive. "They let me use the cabin when I need to." While Mateo made tea with the basic provisions he found in the pantry, Valentina tried once again to use her phone. "Nothing," she sighed, putting it back in her purse. "Do you know if there's a landline around here?" "I'm afraid not. The lines tend to go down with these storms," he replied, handing her a steaming cup. "But you'll be able to communicate tomorrow. The storm won't last forever." They sat in front of the fireplace, the fire casting dancing shadows on their faces. Despite the situation, Valentina found herself enjoying the tranquility of the moment. "So, tell me more about your project," Mateo requested. Valentina's face lit up. She took her tablet out of her briefcase and, to her surprise, it had enough battery to show him her designs. "It's mine," exclaimed Valentina, hugging herself as the cold seeped through her elegant but inadequate outfit. "A few kilometers from here there is a cabin," said Mateo, finishing changing the tire quickly and precisely. "It belongs to some friends. We can wait there until the storm passes." Valentina hesitated. She didn't know this man, and the idea of going to an isolated cabin didn't seem like the smartest decision. She tried calling Suarez again, but the signal had disappeared. "We don't have many options," Mateo insisted, closing the trunk. "The temperature will keep dropping, and with this weather, even Suarez's driver will have trouble getting here." Just then, the second tire completely deflated. Valentina looked at her car, then at the snow-covered road, and finally at the stranger who had appeared as if by magic to help her. "I guess I don't have a choice," she finally conceded. "But as soon as the storm subsides, I need to get in touch with Mr. Suarez. This meeting is too important." Mateo nodded, hiding his relief. He had a few hours to decide how to warn her about Suarez without revealing who he really was. Because if Valentina found out he was helping Mateo Rivero, the tech entrepreneur accused of fraud and wanted by the law, she would probably run away from him as fast as she could. "As best as I could. I promise you'll be safe," he said, helping her into his truck. What he didn't mention was that, ironically, she would be safer with a supposed criminal. Revised. Asterisk. The idea is to design cabins like this one, but integrated into a circular energy system, he explained as he showed her 3-dimensional models. Hidden solar panels among the trees, rainwater collection systems, geothermal heating. Mateo watched with genuine interest. It was brilliant. His designs were not only beautiful, but also revolutionary in terms of energy efficiency. It's impressive, he said sincerely. But don't you find it strange that Suarez wants to build exactly in those locations? He asked, pointing to the marked places on the digital map. They are perfect for harnessing sunlight and have the best landscapes, she replied. They are also known for their mineral deposits, Matteo commented, unable to hold back. Especially gold and silver. Valentina looked at him surprised. How do you know that? Matteo cursed himself internally for his slip. I've spent a lot of time in these mountains. The locals talk. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they shared an impromptu dinner of canned goods and cookies. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the cabin, the warmth of the fireplace and the conversation created an atmosphere of unexpected intimacy. Did you always want to be an architect? Matteo asked, serving AP. The wine had come from a cupboard. Since I was a child, Valentina smiled. My father was a builder. He used to take me to his construction sites and explain to me how each space affected people's lives. And you? What did you do before taking this break? They arrived at a clearing where the terrain sloped steeply down towards a frozen stream. The only option was to descend the slippery slope. Be careful, Matteo warned, starting to descend cautiously. Valentina followed, but halfway down, her elegant urban shoes betrayed her balance. With a muffled cry, she slipped and tumbled down. Without hesitation, Matteo leapt to intercept her, managing to hold onto her, although he himself lost his balance. They rolled several meters, with Matteo shielding Valentina with his body. Finally, they came to a stop at the foot of the slope. Are you okay? He asked, his voice tense with pain. Valentina nodded, quickly getting up. And you? Matteo tried to stand up, but a grimace of pain crossed his face. My leg. I think I hurt my knee. Lucia arrived beside them, having descended more carefully. We have to keep going. They're getting closer. Between the two women, they helped Matteo to his feet. Limping noticeably, they continued their escape, crossing the frozen stream and entering another stretch of forest. The barking of the dogs could be heard closer. Despite the pain, Matteo kept up the pace as best as he could, leaning on Valentina. Argentina. Why did you help me? She asked in a low voice. You could have gotten hurt worse. Matteo looked at her intensely, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Because, despite what they say about me, I'm not the monster that Suarez wants to make people believe I am. That moment of vulnerability. As Matteo heard the name Roberto Suarez, he felt an almost imperceptible change in his face. Suarez was the man who had falsified documents, stolen millions, and destroyed his reputation. He was the same man Matteo had been running from for months. As he got the equipment to change the tire, Valentina's phone suddenly rang. The storm seemed to have allowed the signal to return. Mr. Suarez, yes, I had a little setback. No, don't worry, I'm fine, Valentina said attentively. Are you sending your driver? Perfect. I'm about 30 kilometers from the hotel, on the main road. Matteo, kneeling next to the car, listened to every word as he pretended to focus on loosening the tire bolts. His mind was working at full speed. He couldn't let Valentina fall into Suarez's clutches, not when he knew exactly what kind of ecological projects he really carried out. With a quick decision, Matteo discreetly manipulated the tool he was holding, sliding it towards the rear tire of the vehicle. A precise movement and the air began to slowly escape from the second tire. Everything okay? She asked. Valentina put away her phone. More or less, Matteo replied, sitting up with a worried expression. I can change this tire, but I'm afraid you won't get very far. The storm is getting worse. And as if nature wanted to confirm his words, a gust of icy wind hit them, bringing with it a curtain of snow that reduced visibility to almost nothing. Improved. Lucia, with her hair in a ponytail and a determined expression that contrasted with her youthful face, suddenly appeared. It's Lucia, exclaimed Valentina, surprised. My sister. Before they could react, Lucia opened the cabin door without knocking. Val, for God's sake. Are you okay? I've been looking for you all night. Your phone wasn't answering, and when I called Suarez, he told me you never made it to the meeting and that he had sent someone to look for you, but they couldn't find you either. Lucia stopped short when she saw Matteo. Her eyes widened with instant recognition. You. "You're Matteo Rivero, the fugitive businessman," she said, instinctively stepping back. Valentina looked at Matteo, confused, then at her sister and back at Matteo, whose face had turned pale. "What is she talking about, Matteo?" she asked, starting to understand why he had been so secretive about his identity. Matteo sighed deeply. The moment he had feared so much had arrived. "It's true," he finally admitted. "I am Matteo Rivero, the man accused of embezzling my millions to their investors. It's all over the news," exclaimed Lucia, taking out her phone as if she wanted to check it or perhaps call the police. "Lucia, wait," Valentina intervened, instinctively placing herself between her sister and Matteo. "He helped me when my car broke down. He offered me shelter during the storm and never mentioned who he was." Lucia replied skeptically, "Val, this man is a fugitive. The accusations are false," said Matteo with a calmness that surprised the sisters. Matteo, an innovator in renewable energy technology, hesitated before continuing. It wasn't a lie that he developed those systems, but he omitted that he had founded one of the country's most successful startups before being betrayed by Suarez. "Seriously, that's fascinating," exclaimed Valentina. "My designs could benefit from that technology." The conversation flowed for hours. They talked about their families, their dreams, and failures. Valentina shared stories of her sister Lucia, a fearless journalist always in search of the truth. Matteo spoke of his childhood in a humble neighborhood and his arduous path to engineering. When tiredness overcame them, the issue of beds became evident. "Take the one closest to the fireplace," offered Matteo. "You'll be warmer." "Thank you," Valentina replied, "for everything. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up." "Probably frozen in that elegant white suit," he joked, and they both laughed. That night, as they drifted off to sleep, the sound of rain against the windows was a soothing lullaby. As he listened to Valentina's peaceful breathing from the neighboring bed, Matteo stared at the wooden ceiling. He thought about how to reveal the truth to her, how to explain that the man she was going to meet was a criminal, and how to convince her that he, a supposed fugitive, was actually the victim. Even more complicated, how to ignore this unexpected connection he felt towards her, a connection that went beyond wanting to protect her from Suarez. On the other side of the room, Valentina also remained awake, watching Matteo's silhouette outlined against the dying light of the fireplace. There was something about Matteo, a depth and intelligence that intrigued Valentina. He was so different from the superficial businessmen she was used to dealing with. What neither of them knew was that, while they sought refuge in that cabin, Valentina's sister, Lucia Herrera, had already noticed her absence. Using her journalistic contacts, she was determined to track her down, guided by an instinct that told her something was not right with Roberto Suarez's sudden invitation. Dawn arrived with a clear sky. The storm had passed, leaving a blanket of pristine snow that sparkled under the first rays of the sun. Valentina was the first to wake up and found Matteo asleep in the adjacent bed. She watched him with curiosity. Asleep, he seemed different, more vulnerable, less enigmatic. She decided to make coffee with what little was left in the pantry. The aroma of coffee filled the room as the sun rose, signaling a new day. Matteo woke up, feeling disoriented as he sat up. "Good morning," greeted Valentina, offering him a cup. "The storm has passed." "It seems so," he replied, accepting the coffee. "We should be able to leave today." Valentina nodded, although a part of her felt reluctant for this strange parenthesis in her life to end. "I need to contact Suarez as soon as possible." Matteo's face tensed. "Valentina, about Suarez," he began, but was interrupted by the sound of a motor approaching. They both peered out the window. A red Jeep stopped in front of the cabin, and a woman in her 30s, with dark hair tied back, got out. Script revision. *. Valentina recognized the burly man getting out of the first vehicle. "He's Suarez's head of security." "How did they find us?" she asked, alarmed. Lucia checked her phone and cursed under her breath. "My locator is on. They must have tracked it." "There's a back exit," Matteo pointed out, heading quickly to the back of the cabin. "Through the forest, we can reach the secondary road." "Are we sure we can trust you?" Lucia asked, still hesitant. "At this moment, do you have another option?" Matteo replied, opening a small door hidden behind a closet. There was no time for further debates. The men were already banging on the front door insistently. "We know you're in there," a deep voice shouted. We just want to talk. Of course, with those AR. But they just want to chat, murmured Lucia, pointing out the window at the armed men surrounding the trucks. The three slipped out through the back exit. Just as they heard the loud noise of the front door being forced open, they ran through the trees. The snow made their steps difficult, but it also muffled the sound of their escape. The forest was dense. Snow-covered pines created a natural maze. Matteo led the way, seemingly familiar with the area. This way, he indicated, heading towards a barely visible trail. They advanced for several minutes without being detected, but soon they heard voices and barking dogs behind them. They have tracking dogs, said Lucia, panting. Here's an improved version of the excerpt. This can't be. Do you really think I can meet with Suarez like this? Exclaimed Valentina, pointing at her flat tire as the snow fell relentlessly on her elegant white suit and heels. The man in the brown jacket knelt next to the tire, examining it carefully. His hands, though skilled, showed an uncommon care for someone seemingly used to manual labor. This tire isn't going anywhere, he replied, looking up. It needs a complete change. And how am I supposed to do that in the middle of nowhere? My meeting is in 2 hours, said Valentina, running a hand through her blonde hair in exasperation. The mountain road. From Bariloche, it seemed to mock her with its snow-capped peaks, indifferent to her professional crisis. I have a hydraulic jack and a spare tire in my truck. Can I help you? Offered the man, standing up. Valentina looked at him carefully for the first time. Beneath the brown jacket and worn jeans, there was something that didn't quite fit. His eyes betrayed intelligence, and his manners, despite his apparent roughness, had a subtle refinement. Thank you. I'm Valentina Herrera, she said, extending her gloved hand. Matteo, he simply replied, avoiding giving his last name as he shook her hand. What is someone like you doing in a place like this with this weather? Valentina asked. I'm an architect. I have a meeting with Roberto Suarez to present an ecotourism project. It could be the contract of my life, she explained as they both walked towards the truck. Title: Shadows of the Past. Int. Cabin, Day. Valentina listens to Matteo, her gaze fixed and worried. Matteo, my partner forged documents to incriminate me when I found out he was diverting funds for illegal operations. Lucia, with her phone in hand, feels her journalistic instinct kicking in. Lucia asterisk. I've been investigating that man for months. His ecological projects don't add up. Valentina feels her world shaking. Valentina, what do you mean? Lucia asterisk. I've received clues that he's using those projects as a front for illegal mining, but I lack concrete evidence. Valentina remembers a comment Matteo made about mineral deposits. Valentina, that's why I wanted to build in those places. Matteo approaches cautiously. Matteo, I need your help, Valentina. Your designs have detailed geological information. If we compare them with the documents I've gathered about Suarez's operations, we could expose his facade. Valentina feels betrayed. Valentina, and clear my name. Lucia watches, intrigued. Lucia, I have contacts that could help us verify this information. The tense silence is broken by the sound of approaching vehicles. The three peek out the window, seeing 3 black vans stopping in front of the cabin. Matteo, whispering, Torres. Cut to black. Matteo said, remember, we only need the files from the main server. Elena had confirmed that the access was in Suarez's office. The plan was risky but simple. Valentina would pretend to show interest in resuming the project while installing a remote access device on the company's network. This way, Lucia could digitally infiltrate to obtain the documents that would prove Suarez's guilt and Matteo's innocence. The elevator stopped with a soft chime and the doors opened, revealing a luxuriously decorated hallway. At the end, were the double doors of Roberto Suarez's office. Valentina, my dear, Suarez greeted as he saw her enter. He was a man in his 50s with the perfectly styled salt and pepper hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. What a relief to see you well after your mishap in the mountains. Thank you for rescheduling our meeting, she replied with a calculated smile. I am very excited about this project, and we are impressed with your designs, added Suarez, pointing to the blueprints that Valentina had previously sent, spread out on his desk. They are exactly what we are looking for our eco-resort. Every word felt like a stab. Now that Valentina knew the truth, Suarez's falsehood was painfully obvious. I'm glad to hear that, she replied, approaching the desk. As they discussed the project details, she discreetly connected her tablet to Suarez's computer, pretending to want to show more renders. The access device started working silently. Mateo muttered, clenching his fists. He did the same with me. He used my renewable energy technology to obtain government permits, but in reality, he was mining cryptocurrencies with illegal coal plants. Elena frowned. Do you have concrete evidence? Accusing someone like Suarez is no small matter. I'm working on it, replied Lucia. I have a contact, Javier Mendez, a former accountant of Suarez. He has been gathering evidence, but he is in hiding. He fears for his life. Can you locate him? Mateo asked, trying to sit up but then wincing in pain. I can try, said Lucia, but we need to act fast before Suarez catches on. I will need time. The day turned into night. While Lucia continued with her contacts, Elena had returned to the village to avoid suspicion. Valentina and Mateo were left alone in the cabin. The tension between them was palpable. Valentina was still processing all the information, trying to reconcile the man who had helped her on the road with the fugitive businessman from the news. Why didn't you tell me who you were from the beginning? She finally asked, sitting next to the fire. Mateo looked at her with a mixture of guilt and resignation. Would you have believed me or would you have run to the nearest police? I don't know, she admitted. But you lied to me. Technically, I just omitted information. He tried to joke, but seeing Valentina's serious look, he sighed. I'm sorry, but when I found out you were going to meet with Suarez, I couldn't let him involve you in his dirty business. Why did you care? You didn't know me. Enhanced script. -- Guiding her to a secluded corner, Valentina saw a man waiting next to a black car. To her surprise, it wasn't Suarez, but a young man with glasses and a nervous air. Javier Mendez, she murmured as she recognized him from the photos Lucia had shown her. Miss Herrera, Mendez greeted in a low voice. We don't have much time. Torres looked around, making sure they were alone. I have the documents, all the evidence they need to sink Suarez and clear Rivero's name. Valentina looked at them, confused. Do you not work for Suarez? Torres is my brother, explained Mendez. He has been undercover, helping me gather evidence since I discovered Suarez's illegal activities. When we detected the access device you installed, we knew we had to contact you directly. Torres handed Valentina a small USB drive. Here is everything. Illegal transfers, bribes to officials, the real blueprints of the mines he intended to build using your designs as a front. Why are you helping me? Asked Valentina, still distrustful. Because Suarez betrayed us all, replied Torres. He promised me a partnership in his businesses. He threatened my brother's career, and he not only stole your friend Rivero's company but also his reputation. The sound of doors opening interrupted the conversation. Several silhouettes appeared at the other end of the parking lot. Suarez, growled Torres. He must have discovered the unauthorized access to his system. A sigh of relief swept through the room. The first step had been taken, but everyone knew that a man like Suarez wouldn't go down without a fight. Now comes the hardest part, Elena warned. The legal process. Suarez has powerful connections and top-notch lawyers. It won't be easy to sustain these charges. It doesn't matter, replied Mateo with determination. For the first time in months, we can fight openly, not from the shadows. Elena's phone rang. As she spoke, her face lit up. With a smile. They got him, he announced before hanging up. Suarez was trying to leave the country in his private jet. He was arrested on the runway. The news was met with hugs and held back tears. For Mateo, it meant the beginning of the end of his nightmare. For Valentina, the certainty that she had avoided becoming an unwitting accomplice to an environmental crime. The following hours were a whirlwind of statements, paperwork, and calls. The Suarez case quickly became national news. A respected businessman unmasked as the mastermind behind illegal mining operations and money laundering. 3 days later, Mateo was officially cleared of all charges. The evidence unequivocally showed that he had been falsely incriminated by Suarez after uncovering his illegal activities. What will you do now? Valentina asked as they walked through the gardens of Plaza San Martin, away from the journalists besieging them for the exclusive on the vindicated Millionaire. Rebuild, Mateo replied, gazing at the sunset. Mateo fell silent for a moment, watching the fire. Suarez had already destroyed my life. I didn't want him to destroy yours too. Their gazes met, and something changed in the air between them. It was no longer just tension or mistrust. There was something more, a connection that neither of them had sought but had emerged during those intense shared hours. Your designs are brilliant, Valentina, Matteo continued. They reminded me why I started my company. I wanted to create technology that truly helped the planet, not destroy it under a green facade. And now what? She asked. If we manage to prove that Suarez is guilty, what will happen to your company? I don't know, Matteo confessed. Maybe I can rebuild it, maybe not, but at least I will clear my name. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on their faces. Without thinking, Valentina moved closer to him. It must be hard to lose everything you worked for. The hardest part was losing trust, Matteo replied. I thought I was doing something good, something important, and then I found out I was being used for the opposite. Valentina nodded, understanding that feeling perfectly. She too had been deceived, although fortunately she had found out before completing the project for Suarez. At least you didn't finish your designs, Matteo said, as if reading her thoughts. If you had, you would now be an unwitting accomplice. Like you were, she added. Exactly. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with understanding and complicity. More than any elaborate explanation, the fugitive's vulnerability convinced Valentina that perhaps, just perhaps, he was truly what he claimed to be, another victim of Roberto Suarez. The small mountain town seemed like something out of a postcard, with wooden houses, snow-covered roofs, smoking chimneys, and winding paths among ancient trees. For tourists, it was a winter paradise, for Valentina, Matteo, and Lucia, a temporary refuge. Elena Vasquez, a childhood friend of Lucia and a local police officer, had offered them accommodation in a secluded cabin away from her family. I can't believe I'm hiding a fugitive from justice, she murmured as she bandaged Matteo's injured knee. An alleged fugitive, Lucia corrected, typing frantically on her laptop. If what he says is true, Suarez is the one who should be behind bars. Valentina, lost in thought, reviewed her architectural designs with a new perspective. Every blueprint, every location selected by Suarez, now held a sinister meaning. Look at this, she finally said, placing her tablet on the table. I overlaid a geological map of the region with the locations where Suarez wanted to build. The others gathered around. On the screen, red dots perfectly matched the areas marked for the eco-resort. Gold, silver, and possibly lithium here, Valentina explained, pointing to different points. My beautiful sustainable designs were going to be just a front for a mining operation. That damn. Enhanced excerpt. A mutual understanding united two people who had been similarly betrayed and now shared a common mission. What do you think Lucia is doing? Valentina asked after a while. Probably moving heaven and earth to contact men. Des, responded Matteo. Your sister is intense. Valentina laughed. She always has been. When we were little, I would build houses with blocks and she would investigate who had moved her toys. She is the personification of stubbornness. Fortunately for us, Matteo smiled. Their faces were now very close. Valentina could see the small wrinkles around Matteo's eyes, signs of a life of hard work and recent worries. For a moment, neither of them moved, as if both were holding their breath. It was Matteo who finally broke the spell by leaning back. We should rest. Tomorrow will be a complicated day. But Valentina, on an impulse that surprised them both, closed the distance and pressed her lips against his. It was a brief, almost shy kiss, but loaded with contained emotions. This is madness, she murmured as they separated. The only sane thing in this whole situation. Matteo replied before pulling her back towards him. This second kiss was different. Deeper, more intense, as if both were releasing days of tension, fear, and confusion. The door swung open, separating them. Lucia entered with her face lit up by the excitement of her discovery. I found it, she exclaimed, too focused on her finding to notice the moment she had just interrupted. A silent question in her eyes. These days, despite all the chaos, danger, lies. She continued, searching for the right words. I found something I didn't expect. A millionaire fugitive? Matteo joked, trying to lighten the moment. Someone who risked everything to do the right thing. Valentina replied seriously. Someone who reminded me why I became an architect. To build something lasting, something with purpose. They stopped by a fountain. The city buzzed around them, but in that small space, only the two of them existed. I have a proposal, Matteo said, holding both of Valentina's hands. I'm thinking of creating a foundation, using my fortune and knowledge to develop truly sustainable projects. And you need an architect, she completed, smiling. I need the architect, he corrected, someone whose vision can transform landscapes without destroying them. Someone who understands that we can coexist with nature without exploiting it. Valentina's eyes sparkled. It was exactly the kind of project she had always dreamed of. Where would the first one be? Bariloche. Matteo replied without hesitation. I think we owe something to those mountains where it all began. Months later, in an intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends, Matteo and Valentina inaugurated the first project of the Rivero Herrera Foundation, Ascen. Here is an enhanced version of the excerpt. They're here, a voice shouted, and the echo. The sound of hurried footsteps reverberated on the concrete. Go, Torres ordered Valentina and Mendez. I'll hold them off. But Valentina began to protest. Now, Torres roared, pulling a gun from his jacket. Valentina and Mendez ran towards the exit for vehicles. Behind them, they could hear shouts and what sounded like a scuffle. Matteo, Valentina called through the earpiece. We're heading out through the east ramp. We have the evidence, but Suarez found us out. As they emerged onto the street, Valentina's heart skipped a beat when she saw Suarez and two bodyguards blocking their path. What a disappointment, Valentina, Suarez said with false sadness. You had so much potential. The bodyguards advanced towards them, but before they could reach them, a black van appeared skidding around the corner. The doors swung open, revealing Matteo and Lucia. Get in, Matteo shouted. Valentina pushed Mendez towards the van and ran after him. One of the bodyguards managed to grab her by the arm, but she freed herself with a quick move, leaving a piece of her white sleeve in the man's hand. As soon as the doors closed, the van sped off, leaving Suarez shouting orders to his men. Are you guys okay? Matteo asked, turning to look at Valentina from the driver's seat. Yes, she replied, breathing heavily. And we have the evidence. Torres and Mendez were on our side all along. I knew there was something off about that Torres, Lucia commented, examining the USB device. It always looked too smart. Enhanced text. Asterisk. I sense some tension in you, Valentina, Suarez commented after a brief silence. Everything's fine, I'm just tired. The journey from Bariloche was exhausting, she replied, avoiding his penetrating gaze. At that moment, Suarez's phone rang. It was an apparently important call that forced him to excuse himself. I need to take this. Fernando will show you the grounds on the 3D model in the conference room. I'll be back in a few minutes. Fernando Torres, the head of security they had seen at the cabin, entered the office. He was tall, burly, with a scar crossing his left eyebrow. His dark eyes studied Valentina intently. This way, Miss Herrera, he indicated in a deep voice. The device is working, Valentina whispered as she followed Torres down the hallway. Lucia, do you have access? Logging in now, her sister's voice replied in the earpiece. I need a few more minutes. Torres led Valentina, but instead of heading to the conference room, they took an elevator to the underground parking lot. Excuse me, where are we going? Valentina asked, feeling panic starting to grip her. Mr. Suarez prefers to show you the grounds in a more private location, Torres replied without looking at her. Something's not right, Valentina whispered. They're taking me to the parking lot. Get out of there now, Matteo ordered, his voice tense with concern. But then, it was late. The elevator doors opened directly to the underground parking lot, dark and almost empty at that hour. This way, Torres indicated. Javier Mendez had just been located in Puerto Madero, hiding in an apartment under a false name, and he was willing to talk. Valentina and Matteo exchanged a look filled with silent promises. First they would solve this problem. Then they would deal with the meaning of that kiss. What's the plan? Matteo asked, returning to the present. Elena will help us get to Buenos Aires without being detected, explained Lucia. But first we need a way to access Suarez's central office. That's where the original documents proving embezzlement are. I can do it, offered Valentina. My meeting with Suarez is still on. I can reschedule it and take the opportunity to enter. It's too dangerous, Matteo protested. It's our only option, Valentina replied determinedly. Besides, now I have my own scores to settle with him. The glass and steel skyscraper stood imposingly in the heart of Buenos Aires financial district, the headquarters of the Suarez Corporation, a monument to the power and ambition of one man. Valentina took a deep breath as she crossed the revolving doors, dressed in her elegant white suit. Miss Herrera, Mr. Suarez is waiting for you on the 42nd floor, the receptionist informed her with a rehearsed smile. In her ear, a tiny earpiece kept her connected. Connection with Matteo and Lucia, who were waiting in a van parked 2 blocks away. I'm getting on the elevator, Valentina murmured discreetly. Can you hear me? Perfectly, the voice responded. Title. The end of the game. Matteo, with a furrowed brow, asked, Where is Torres? Mendez, with evident concern, replied, He stayed behind to give us time. As the van drove away towards the meeting point with Elena, Valentina looked at Matteo. In his eyes, she could see relief, gratitude, and something deeper that had started in that cabin during the snowstorm. We almost made it, he said, as if reading her thoughts. Just a little more. But everyone was aware that the hardest part was yet to come. Suarez was not someone who accepted defeat easily, and now, more than ever, he had become dangerous. Elena's office in the Central Delegation of Buenos Aires was a hive of activity. Officers were coming and going, and the phones never stopped ringing. In the midst of the chaos, Valentina, Matteo, Lucia, and Javier Mendez waited nervously. Do you think it will be enough? Valentina asked, looking at the screen displaying the documents from the USB. It has to be, Matteo replied determinedly. There are records of illegal transfers, incriminating emails, and even plans for mining operations disguised as tourist centers. Elena returned with a serious but determined expression. The Fiscalía has issued an arrest warrant against Roberto Suarez. Right now, they are raiding his office and residence. And Fernando? Mendez asked, concerned about his brother. They found him in the parking lot, injured but alive, Elena reported. He is under police protection at the hospital. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Ecological Research Center and sustainable tourism in the same mountains where their car had stopped in the middle of the snow. The building, a marvel of bioclimatic architecture, integrated perfectly into the mountainous landscape. Hidden solar panels among the trees, rainwater collection systems, and local materials made up a complex that seemed to have naturally grown from the terrain. Lucia, now director of a specialized section in environmental journalism, covered the event. Elena, promoted to commissioner thanks to her role in the Suarez case, attended as a guest of honor. Even Fernando Torres and his brother Javier were present, having found redemption by helping to dismantle Suarez's criminal empire. As the guests toured the facilities, Matteo took Valentina to a private viewpoint overlooking the road where they had met. 6 incredible months, she remarked, leaning on the railing. Sometimes I still can't believe everything that has happened and what is yet to come, Matteo replied, surprising Valentina by kneeling in front of her. Our meeting may. It could have been a coincidence or destiny, he said, taking out a small case from his pocket. But our future is a choice I want to make with you. With trembling hands, he opened the case, revealing a beautiful ring with a light green stone, the same color as the lakes of Bariloche. Valentina Herrera, will you marry me? Valentina's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, unable to speak. To build something new, she replied, turning to look into his eyes. A vehicle approached, interrupting their moment. Lucia had arrived and she wasn't alone. Elena was with her, along with Fernando Torres and Javier Mendez. We bring news, exclaimed Lucia as she got out of the car, waving an envelope in the air. And champagne for everyone, except for you, sister, who will have to settle for juice. As the group gathered in the living room overlooking the road where it all began, Valentina felt a deep sense of gratitude. What had started as a professional disaster had transformed into a richer and more meaningful life than she could have ever imagined. To unexpected paths, Matteo toasted, raising his glass, and to flat tires that lead us exactly where we need to be. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses, celebrating not only the good news Lucia brought, the approval of an environmental protection law she had been advocating for months, but also the strange and wonderful way their lives had intertwined. As they clinked their glasses and sipped their drinks, the room filled with laughter and joy, a testament to the power of unexpected connections and the beauty of shared journeys. As she looked at her chosen family, Valentina thought about the story she would one day tell her son or daughter. How her car had stopped in the middle of the snow, not knowing that the one who would help her would be a fugitive millionaire, and that they would fall in love. Corrected. From the womb, Roberto Suarez was already innovating like his father. The Rivero Herrera Foundation had established itself as a national model to follow. Their sustainable projects not only protected the environment, but also provided decent jobs for local communities. The Suarez case had set a precedent, prompting authorities to further investigate the alleged ecological projects of other companies. Roberto Suarez was serving a sentence in a federal prison. His illegal operations had been completely dismantled, and part of his confiscated fortune was allocated to repairing the environmental damage caused by his activities. "Lucia is coming today," Valentina commented. "She says she has important news." "Another journalism award?" Mateo asked as he poured 2 cups of local herbal tea. "I don't know." She sounded mysterious. The environmental journalism section that Lucia led had gained international prestige for its investigations into ecological crimes. Her work had contributed to the creation of stricter environmental protection laws. Elena also visited them frequently. As a commissioner, she had implemented a special unit dedicated to environmental crimes, inspired by the S case. Suarez. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my car hadn't stopped on that road," Valentina reflected. "If I had never met you, you would probably be designing shopping centers in the city, stuck in traffic and longing for the mountains," Mateo joked. "And you would still be running away instead of." When she finally found her voice again, she could only say, "Who would have thought that my worst day on the road would turn into the beginning of my best life?" The snowy mountains watched in silence as a love, born in adversity and blossomed in truth, manifested with every kiss. It was a love as unexpected as the encounter that had sparked it. A car stranded in the snow, a struggling architect, and a runaway millionaire who turned out to be exactly what she didn't know she needed. A year had passed since the opening of the eco-friendly center and the marriage proposal. During that time, Valentina and Mateo's lives had completely changed. Their home in the mountains, designed by Valentina and built under both of their supervision, stood as a testament to their shared vision. The house, modern yet cozy, had large windows framing spectacular views of the lake and the mountains. On that spring morning, Valentina gazed at the landscape from the terrace, with one hand resting on her 6-month pregnant belly. Mateo came out to meet her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Good morning, architect," he whispered in her ear, planting a kiss on her neck. "How are my 2 favorite people today?" "Restless," she replied with a smile, feeling movement in her belly. "I think she'll be an architect like her mom. She's already redesigning my interior." Mateo laughed, placing his hand on hers. "Or maybe an engineer," he added, with a spark of excitement in his eyes.